Monday comes early. This chapter closes. A new door opens. This is the second shift.
A wealthy life is a life where you have made an impact on the lives of others, and you've done it in a real authentic, intentional way, regardless of what that impact was. I think in emergency medicine, any physician can say that for sure, and remind yourselves of that. It's important. Leave the planet a little better than you found it.
My guest today is Dr. Michael Fraser, the CEO of the American College of Emergency Physicians. But this conversation isn't really about leading an organization. It's about leading a career. We talk about why relationships matter more than resumes, how great leaders build great teams, and why even emergency medicine needs to rethink what a successful long-term career looks like. If you've ever wondered what's next after mastering your profession, I think you'll enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Second Shift podcast, where we focus on conversations with high-impact professionals as they navigate career transitions, including retirement. I am your host, Brian Jepson. I'm an emergency medicine physician who recently retired from clinical practice and works full-time now as a financial planner at Targeted Wealth Solutions. I also create physician-specific financial education content on my website at brianjepson.com. So before we get going with my guest today, just a housekeeping item. Moving forward, and as it has been over the last couple of months, my co-host Aaron Millage will be more of an occasional contributor, like if we do a recap episode, for example. So Aaron has another second shift going on in his life, which is limiting his availability, but maybe we can talk to him about that in the future at some point. So anyway, Mike, you're stuck with me today. Hope you can deal with it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, up to this point, all of our guests on the podcast have been doctors, although that's certainly not a requirement. Plenty of other professionals experience the same kind of opportunities and challenges when they explore career transitions. But doctors definitely often deal with the kinds of things that we're talking about. Our guest today is also a doctor, but of the PhD variety.
Not that kind of doctor.
Yeah, though he does work closely with doctors of the MD and the DO variety. So Michael Fraser is the current CEO of the American College of Emergency Physicians, or ACEP. Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. It's awesome to be here, Brian.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation. So before we get going into it, a little bit more about Mike. He has a master's and a doctorate degree in sociology from the University of Massachusetts. Also has a master's degree from Michigan State University in management, strategy, and leadership. And before he became involved with ACEP, he was the CEO of the American College of Pathologists, the CEO of the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, and the CEO of the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Not only is he involved in management and leadership, he's also a prolific author with 40 peer-reviewed scientific publications and commentaries, and is a contributor to several book projects. And he's an educator as an affiliated faculty member at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, in health administration and policy departments, right?
Yep.
So again, another impressive list of accomplishments from our guests. Mike, again, thanks for joining us. And what I'd love to hear first is just your own personal journey as you made your various transitions through your career. Particularly, I think it's interesting how you started out in sociology, and now you're leading physician organizations. Help us.
Yeah. You never know where you're going to end up, do you? I started my career thinking I was going to be a academic faculty teaching sociology. That's what I was trained to do. And in the interesting way that life unfolds, I started doing research on HIV/AIDS. Medical sociology was sort of my area of focus. And this was in the mid to late 90s. And I got really involved in some qualitative research projects with folks living with AIDS at the time, which was a totally different epidemic in many ways.
Yeah.
And was living in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, beautiful part of the world. and realized, what I really also enjoyed was advocacy, and that led me down to DC. So I dropped out of teaching, and student loans had something to do with it too. I needed to make a little bit. And through a friend, got my first association job at the National Association of County and City Health Officers, where I was doing research with them, a big national association that work with all the public health leaders at the local level across the country. And that allowed me both to do research, but also understand what it meant to advocate for a constituency and, in Washington, and learned a lot about the political process and what associations do. There's no one way folks come to associations. There's no PhD in association management. We all just sort of fall into it. And so, the rest is, like you said, history, in the sense that I've moved in my career up from technical jobs to leadership jobs. There was a moment in time when I was leading the Pennsylvania Medical Society. I think it must have been 2015, 2016, when I realized, there's probably a body of knowledge called management that would be good for me to learn. The School of Hard Knocks and Good Ideas works, but, being a technical person that was then promoted to leadership and increasing responsibilities, working with boards and strategy and leading large teams, going back to school at Michigan State, got a great degree in management, strategy, and leadership. Really prepared me for sort of the next phase of my roles, bigger and different things. It's just been a great journey. And all of these career transitions, and this is why, especially when I speak to young people and students, were the result of networks. I mean, I don't know how to find a job. I just know how to talk to people that care about what I do and can show me options. And I think a lot of us forget that. Yeah.
That's a principle I hear over and over from our guests. Mm-hmm. The idea that don't build resumes, build relationships. Right?
Totally.
And because that's, especially in today's environment, when it's hard to kind of set yourself apart.
Yeah.
If you've got a whole list of 100 different people that are trying to apply for that job, you need something to set yourself apart. And usually it's your relationships that do it.
Definitely. And, it was really hard in COVID. A lot of folks didn't have the opportunity to physically meet, obviously. And I really worried about our staff, teams that weren't able to go to national conferences and sort of strengthen those networks. And then a lot of folks want to work from home. And I just remind them, hey, that's great and convenient and nice, but there's a lot of reason to be in an office together, and make those connections. So it's a great learning for me. And now that I'm at ACEP again, the result is some great connections. Not that they got me the job, but they pushed me in the right direction. Yeah. I'm just thrilled to be here working with folks like you. It's incredible. It's been since November, and learned a lot.
Well, we're happy to have you. It's great to have a great leadership team, and excited to see the direction that you take things with ACEP and elsewhere. So let me ask you this: as you were early in your career, you were kind of, before you went and got your second master's degree or third or whatever it was, in management and leadership. What about leadership? What about your experience kind of drove you that direction? So, in other words, how did you decide that you were going to be a good leader?
Well, I didn't decide. I wanted to be a good leader. I didn't decide. I think good leaders, there's lots of ways to be a good leader, but it isn't something that I think a lot of folks know how to do, or, necessarily. There's a lot of bad leaders I've seen as well.
More bad leaders than good leaders, probably, right?
But I think that the transformation for me, moving from management to leadership and thinking about where I wanted to end up, was I'd been real successful with the smaller team, leading grant programs, leading research programs, eventually leading divisions of functional areas, and becoming more of a deputy sort of operational person. And that was great. Again, the technical knowledge is really important. But I had been promoted because of my performance and not necessarily because I knew how to lead groups of people
or the team's performance.
Or the team's performance. And that shift, understanding, wait a sec, my role is to help this team thrive, not to do all their work and do it, the right way, according to me.
Do it well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a tough lesson to learn, but I found that so many people in so many roles are promoted because of their technical acumen and their job they were doing. They did a really good job. And they move into new roles and they don't do a good job because they're not prepared for that job. Yeah. And they try to do their old job and their new job. That's really hard. You can't do that. Right.
Yeah.
So over time, I've gotten a lot better about that. I don't know if it makes me a good leader, but it makes me a better leader. And really been focused over the last few years on how to put together a team that works well together, because I've learned the hard way. None of this is about me, and I think, again, that's the journey a lot of folks make from management to leadership, thinking, all right, I'm going to get this title. I'm going to get this role.
Yeah.
And it's really not about you at all. And for a lot of folks, that's really a hard lesson to learn.
So when you're trying to select team members, what kind of attributes are you looking for? I mean, because it's a skill to be a leader. It's also a skill to be a follower, right? And be a team member, and they're different skills. And so, as you're building out a team, as the leader, what are you looking for?
Yeah, it's funny how much time we spend talking about leadership when so much has to do with followership, right? Which is, why would anybody want to follow you in the first place? And then how are you a good follower? Because a lot of folks aren't.
That's hard. I think that's harder. Yeah. I think it's harder to be a good follower than a good leader, honestly.
Totally. The teams that I've had the real pleasure of working with are folks that know their jobs really, really well. I mean, that competency is the first thing you look for, right? But know and care about other people, and can really motivate folks to be their best. And again, not do the work of their teams, but to lead those folks and set a vision, motivate them around that, and move them forward. And that's something you really have to select for. Does not happen organically in a lot of places. And I've been lucky being in places where that talent exists, and through networks, through professional networks, had the opportunity to really meet a bunch of different kinds of people. And I always joke with my team, like, one day you work for me, the next day I'll work for you. You never know where you're going to end up, but they're all folks you'd take a bullet for. I don't know a nonviolent way of saying that, but people that there's just
a rubber bullet,
incredible trust, and you don't question their acuity or their technical acumen, but also are good people. We have so many people bring so many issues to work, and you have to work through all of that. You can't suppress it. And especially today with I think there's 5 different generations in the same office. Wow. You got to have the emotional intelligence to manage all of that. Right. And so I really try to find people like that. And when I've obviously made mistakes and bad fits, and, I admit that, but you try the best you possibly can, because it does take a team. It's a cliche, but it's true.
No, I think, to extend that cliche a little bit, I like, if we were to use a football analogy, and a lot of coaches say, own your 1/11th on the field, right? At every given moment. So you have your job, but 1/11th isn't going to accomplish the goal. So you have to understand how your portion fits in with the entire mission and goal of the team.
Exactly.
And I think it's the team leader's job probably to help everybody understand how they fit in, and then give them ownership of their portion of it.
Give them ownership and ownership mentality, the conscientiousness that comes from people feeling like they own the work. I mean, that's what propels commitment. That's what propels high performance. The autonomy that folks have when you say, this is yours. and I'm a resource, but I'm letting you fly.
Yeah.
And, not everybody can do that. And so you really gotta select people for that. You gotta support them. The other thing I again learned the hard way is I used to go to my boss and be like, I don't think I should do this, tough call, or call this member and deliver this bad news.
Yeah.
And often for lots of different reasons, I was right, and he would have to do it because it was a CEO call. And I remember that because I was so relieved, but I was also so impressed that he would do that.
Yeah. And now you're a CEO.
Now I try to do that. Yeah. And it stinks, but I think it shows the team I'm willing to do that stuff, and I'm not going to, dump all the crappy stuff on them, and they do their share of crappy stuff. So we definitely share it all.
Awesome. So I'm also curious because before you became the CEO of ACEP, Emergency Physicians, you were the CEO of Pathologists.
Yeah.
And
totally similar, pathology and emergency medicine.
I was going to say, I'm trying to think of a specialty that's more different than those two. And I'm struggling to come up with one at the moment, but
yeah.
So tell me, I'm just curious about, you've been in the ACEP job for less than a year. Tell me kind of what some of the similarities and what some of the differences that you see, from those two jobs, or even the one before that you had is.
Yeah. So. The College of American Pathologists is an amazing organization. It's a great story. It was formed really by, all associations have this same kind of origin story, folks that care so much about the specialty. They want a voice in Washington. They realize they're stronger together. I mean, that's the power of associations. That's what I've learned over 30 years working in associations of all different kinds. And they created another layer to this at CAP, at the College of American Pathologists, where they also said, we can raise each other in terms of quality. We can help each other in terms of quality improvement. And through this incredible development, they started sharing the test results of similar tests in all their laboratories. And they have this archive of it, and it's like the Smith Corona, onion skin paper, and you just sort of see it and you're like, wow, this is super cool. And they started this program to compare each other's results and hold each other to a higher standard of quality. And they grew it into a $300 million organization.
Wow.
So I had, and CAP is the largest, one of the largest providers of proficiency testing materials in the U.S. for laboratories.
Yeah.
And an incredible, again, sort of homegrown and profession developed laboratory accreditation program, which there's very few deemed by CMS to do accreditation on behalf of the government. So they created this incredible accreditation program that's now global, and ton of resource, ton of asset. But similar to ACEP and similar to many of my colleagues in the medical society community, we have these legacy organizations that were formed, and certainly the governance models were formed way, way, way back when, in terms of Pennsylvania Medical Society, we had a House of Delegates very much like the AMA. And I used to, joke with people this was for the day, there was no email. You had to get on the horse and ride to Harrisburg to see your friends and make policy and then ride back, but that flavor of legacy and tradition and real positive attributes to these medical societies, also a real blind spot for us in many ways, where moving the battleship, a lot of people say that about ACEP, and I'm like, well, try a group like CAP that's $300 million and 700 staff. So moving these legacy medical societies into where we need to be, which is, real-time relevance, impact in Washington, impact in our states, helping members navigate the massive transformations happening in medicine, physician employment, patient expectations, AI, all the medical knowledge that doubles every 6 months or whatever maybe now it's 3 months. Yeah. And we just can't move like that. And so part of my mission is to to help our board see that. I know they can see it. They're incredibly smart people, but really make the case for why we need to address this transformation in our medical society and our college, similar to CAP, similar to pretty much every other medical society that we have. I mean, that's where we're at. And we are at ACEP incredibly lucky in the sense that we have a really big share of emergency medicine physicians that are members in our organization.
Right.
Our retention is pretty high. In fact, I reached out to a friend to get some help just thinking through membership marketing. He's like, you're doing pretty good. I'm not sure you're going to get much higher than that.
Squeeze much more out of the rock, right?
And we're actually going up in terms of overall member numbers. So, I mean, that's good news, right?
Yeah.
So there's value. It's just telling that value story differently for the diverse audiences we want to join us. And there's a lot of competition in our space. That was similar to pathology too. Everybody's got a subspecialty and interest area. There's, they get mad at somebody somewhere along the way and form their own organization. Right. And so we have these splinters. And the other thing I see, happening in medical societies is there's just this proliferation of little groups. And we spend a lot of time with each other on those things that either drive us both crazy or we both need to pay attention to. Yeah. And meanwhile, the big issues impacting us are on the outside. Yeah. And one of my medical society CEO colleagues says it's called she calls it the circular firing squad, or shooting at each other versus the external facing. And, I think in many ways she's right. But it's been an incredible transition. I gave up a lot to move, and a lot of folks were disappointed. But where I came from before CAP was the Association of State and Territorial Health Officers, and that was all the secretaries, commissioners of health across the country, many of whom were emergency physicians. And the chance to kind of get back into that lane and really leverage the public health angle that emergency medicine is all about was real exciting. And, these jobs don't happen very often. And so when they do pop up, you kind of have to ask yourself, would this be? So I jumped on it. And, again, in terms of second shift and thinking about careers, it was definitely not a safe bet. Right. And it was probably, again, not the way that most people would have approached it. But the older I get, the more I realize I got to do the things that, resonate with my gut, trust my gut. And it all worked out.
No, that's such an important lesson, I think it's very easy to maintain the status quo. Yeah. Even if the status quo is good or if it's bad, it's just easier to stick it out as opposed to, taking a leap of faith and moving to something that you don't know if it's going to be better or not. I mean, you think it will be. Right. But so I think that's what keeps a lot of people stuck in their current careers is if they're unhappy, is just anxiety or fear that's of stepping out.
Yeah, it's a lot of change. I moved. Fortunately, it's really just me. I don't have an immediate family that I have to worry about, kids in schools and partners' jobs, and so I get it. I totally get it. But I jumped in. Literally, I moved from Chicago to Dallas, and it's just been a great opportunity. And there's a lot to do here. There's a lot to do here.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I love what you said also about looking at, you have these historical organizations, and that can even be a hospital. It doesn't have to be big organizations, but you have historical units, or maybe it's an emergency physician group or whatever. That do we keep doing things because that's how we've always done them, or are we nimble and start questioning dogma? We're trained as physicians to always question dogma and be sure, be as evidence-based as possible. And the evidence is always changing. As organizations, are we doing the same thing? And, so I think that's an important perspective.
Yeah. Our governance structures, having a board, having committees, having a process, having a council, those are all real important for making decisions with everybody included. But the other day, I forget who I was talking to. It might've been a few folks on our board. There's a reason why Congress was designed to move slowly. I don't know why everybody's shocked that they're not getting much done, because that's, kind of the pace of change that was designed into the system. Right? Yeah. And we have, we have some of that similar, feel in our organizations too.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I imagine that of all the things that you've done as your career over time, working with physicians in particular, there's a lot of issues unique or, that are common and fairly universal among just medicine.
Yeah.
Have you picked out anything so far that you feel like is unique to emergency physicians that you either ACEP is already addressing or that you'd like it to further address or do better at?
Yeah. I have worked with physicians in pretty much all my roles. My members have either been like partially physicians or all physicians, depending on the group. And I can't tell you what an honor it is to work with, literally the 2% of this, smartest Americans that there are, smartest folks on this planet. And
there's pros and cons for that.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. So that's where I was going next, But, and in terms of smart, one of the things that impressed me about pathology was literally that level of knowledge. It's just about a real small thing. It's just so impressive, and what they're able to share. And similarly with emergency medicine, the number of things you have to know. I was looking over the model of EM clinical practice, and I was like, I need a dictionary. I don't even know what half of this stuff is. So the fact that someone can walk in totally unknown to you, and you have to diagnose that person and put them in the right place for help, or whatever the next step is with them. Wow. So smartest people literally on earth, and that's a joy. And the curse of that is, there's a lot of, well, how do you know? And, let's over-engineer this process so it can be as complicated as possible. And, the other thing that surprised me, and this I certainly understood in pathology, was like, well, let's do another study. Let's run another test. But even in emergency medicine, there is that sort of, what else do we need to know to make the right decision? And of course, you want your physician to do that. What I find with emergency medicine that's different from the other physician specialties that I've worked with is just the, ability to pivot from a sore throat to a cancer patient to someone who's in a car wreck to someone who's having a behavioral health crisis, to then go tell a mom that her child has passed, to then go help someone who's, basically got indigestion that they thought was a heart attack. I mean, it's exhausting to even imagine what that's like for me to say that in 30 seconds, but to live that life. And I think that's an area where ACEP has a lot more we could do in terms of supporting folks on shift that have to do that clinically, but also off shift when you go home. And, I've heard from a lot of folks that they need time when they get home, that their family didn't really even understand what they were doing until they saw the pit. Right. And then asked, is that really like your job? Yeah. And they're like, it's actually really like my job.
Yeah.
And we don't see that side of you when we're in an emergency department because we're sick, or, we're with a family member and we're worried. And we don't see what that does to relationships and to someone's career fulfillment, or, again, how they process. And I think what we're seeing in emergency medicine, I had a call with one of our board members a couple of weeks ago, basically said, I think we need to really rethink what our strategy is for late career emergency medicine physicians, because they're not practicing clinically. Like, you can't do this for 30 years. Yeah. And that's a big change. I think a lot of folks that we're working with now that are legacy members, lifetime members, it was, they didn't question that. But I had a conversation with, a couple of folks a couple of weeks ago, and it was like, we got to normalize like taking a break. We got to normalize sabbaticals. We got to normalize, what it means to have another job
shifts,
in addition.
Shift loads,
yes, changing shifts,
schedules,
exactly.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And it was incredible. You know, we had this conversation with HRSA, a federal agency that does the workforce projection numbers. And they came out with a report saying there's an oversupply of physicians, emergency physicians, which, you know, just flies in the face of current understanding of the specialty. Yeah. And so we called them and we're like, this isn't right. And, you know, we just want to have a conversation about what's really going on here. And it really came down to the way that they were modeling. They were assuming that all emergency physicians work, you know, 40 hours a week. Well, we know that's not true, you know.
Right.
And so when you just make that one change to it's 32 hours instead of 40, there's a massive shortage, you know. So it's these kinds of things about the specialty that make it really, really different and make it super interesting. I mean, I remind folks, especially when we're doing advocacy work, that emergency physicians don't get to decide what patients they're going to see. They don't get to choose their panel. They don't get to choose their insurer, any of that. It's all comers. I mean, and that's a real big difference. And I think it's what makes this such a wonderful specialty. I mean, I have just been embraced by so many different members in so many different contexts. And I think it just speaks to how they are when they're at work, honestly.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's the people that went in that were in emergency medicine that led me to the field, honestly, because I do think that there's a different personality type that is drawn to emergency medicine and succeeds within emergency medicine. But that same personality type and just the nature of what we do day to day, like you mentioned, does make it hard to keep doing it forever. And I think is reflective in the statistics that, you know, show higher burnout rates in emergency medicine. I mean, I think their burnout is high in all of medicine right now, and that is systemic. That's a systemic problem.
Right.
But I think that there's things that are unique to emergency medicine that makes it even higher. Some of that is also, you know, the fact that we like to do all kinds of different things, and you know, which kind of naturally leads us to start looking elsewhere and looking for other, you know, other second shifts that may be out there. And so I mean, I think it's great that ACEP is acknowledging that and starting to prepare physicians in the college for what, I mean, I don't want to say it's an inevitability because it's not, but for a likelihood that, you know, your ability to keep doing what you're doing is going to change over time.
Right.
And yet we need to find a way to kind of champion or continue to kind of keep the older emergency physicians in our midst engaged and contributing, because we do have so much to contribute.
Yeah, you know, I think that it's really actually an asset. If I was looking at specialties, and I enjoy flexibility and I get bored easily, I'm not saying I could ever be an emergency medicine physician, but I would look seriously at it because, you know, it's one of the few specialties where you can do a second shift. You can keep practicing clinically for some shifts and then do something else. And man, do we have a lot of innovative, entrepreneurial, super active emergency medicine physicians. And I know there's a ton of Facebook groups and, you know, online communities. Like, I've been impressed. I just been so impressed with all the side gigs and, you know, second shift work that folks are doing. And
that's why most of my guests tend to be ER docs, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's awesome. And there's a lot of them. So, you know, and then, you know, you find, especially with emergency medicine physicians, there's this joke that folks like to tell each other, right? That everybody in emergency medicine has ADHD. I don't know if that's true, but
at least career ADHD.
Yeah, career ADHD. And so I think that's an asset, you know, because man, you're, like I said, every day is different, and you see it all, and that's cool.
Curiosity is an asset, and it drives it. ER drives it for sure.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. It is. It does make a board meeting hard. It does make
it's like herding cats.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. They're like, okay, everything has to be 20 minutes or less. I'm like, I can barely set up this conversation in 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you see in the next decade that needs to change in emergency medicine in particular?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would start with some of these big factors that we hear a lot about that are influencing how folks think about their practice of emergency medicine, and those are working conditions and sort of the drivers of burnout, the boarding and crowding problems that are real acute in most places. Workplace violence, those are two really big priorities for us. There's a lot we can do there by ourselves. There's a lot we can do there with others. The sustainability of emergency medicine practice and just what's happening economically and threats to EMTALA and threats to, all the different factors. So really starting to imagine a payment or reimbursement system that would work for us. That's actually a conversation I had today, which is, it's important for us to advocate what we're against, and it's really important for us to advocate for fair reimbursement. But the system isn't working. It's definitely not working for emergency medicine. Many places it's not working for patients. But instead of saying what we're against, what are we for? And what's that look like in 10 years? The reason this country is borrowing money from China to pay down its federal debt is because of healthcare.
Yeah.
And, it ain't because of emergency medicine in particular, but what's our part of that we can fix and ideate and, work through our committees and with our experts to put out there. Yeah. I think we're going to see lots of different models of practice. I think a lot of folks go straight to urgent care, freestandings. And, I just think there's a lot of other ways to think about the emergency department as the front door sort of gatekeeper to healthcare. And, I just was on the phone with a friend last night. He was at his primary care, had must have been a pulse heart rate of 130. She sent him across the street to the hospital. He's been there for 4 days getting tests. And, that was the front door to finding out he was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah. And it again, what's this sort of acute unscheduled care look like moving forward? And that's actually where, coming from public health, it's a real interesting connection, because you start thinking about what can we do in the community? What can we do with wearables? What can we do with telehealth? What can we do with nurses versus physicians? What can we do? There's just so many opportunities to really think through redesigning what emergency medicine and healthcare looks like in 10 years. And we're going to have to, that's the necessity. So for us, it's that. And then we want to really, again, begin to say, we know you, we want to know what you're interested in. We want to know where you went to school. We want to know what your subspecialties are. We want to know what your hobbies are. We want to know skills that you want to improve, and then begin to personalize what we offer. So instead of saying, come to Scientific Assembly, it's got a ton of learning, we can say, come to Scientific Assembly because you're going to be able to take the updated course on the course you took last year in this area, or you're going to, again, be much more precise in how we reach out to members and engage them. And we're implementing the data systems to do that right now. So I think in 10 years, it's going to be a really, really different ACEP.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it. It's fun to kind of see that possibility. So on that line, then, if you are talking to, and I'm sure you have talked to these people, but if you were to talk to a young emergency physician or even a resident who's going into emergency medicine, what kind of advice or encouragement could you give that person? Because you're talking to an old dog now. So I've already been there, done that.
No, you're not an old dog. Don't worry about that. I actually, when I have the chance to visit with residents and I have the chance to meet with early career physicians, it's always such a joy, because they're making a choice knowing all of the real downside, and there's a lot of downside now, and we hear about the downside all the time. But they're inspired, and they're there because they care, and all of our members do. I'm not trying to say that, but it's just so fresh. It's just like refreshing,
Yeah.
and super interesting as well. I mean, they're going to have second shifts before they do medicine,
Yeah.
But what I tell them is stick with organized medicine because it's lonely to practice out there. And I remind folks, and when we do residency visits or have the chance to do talks, there's so much you don't learn in medical school, and there's so much you don't learn in residency that isn't real clinical. It's about the life of medicine. It's about the business of medicine. And that comes from us. That comes from associations. It comes from professional societies. It comes from, other learning institutions. And we want to be that source, so stick with us. We did a just sort of back of the envelope looking at our advocacy impacts. And, I'm really proud to say, I think given the advocacy that we've done over the years, I think we increased physician reimbursement significantly. And without us, that wouldn't be the case,
Well,
so
plus
things like that.
Is there a better way to create those relationships we talked about at the beginning of the podcast?
Right.
I mean, so if you are looking at fields that are adjacent or just are part of emergency medicine, want to explore those, you can find somebody. You
can find somebody.
Right.
We've got a whole network. I mean, that's the beauty of the specialty. It's huge. There's, 60,000 emergency medicine physicians, and we've got about 40,000 in ACEP. That's great. And there's somebody that's like you, interested in the same stuff. And, you'll find them. You'll find them in our online community. You'll find them at Scientific Assembly or one of our others. You'll find them in your state chapter. I mean, there's lots of ways to get engaged. And the other thing is, kind of getting back to this whole second shift, what I understand is a lot of emergency medicine physicians move into leadership or executive roles. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of opportunities for folks to lead, whether it's in committees or sections, on our board or in council. And that can prepare you for those in a interesting way. And we're actually looking at starting some new programs in those areas to help folks prepare, for those kinds of opportunities moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, I'm going to take you back to you now, your personal story.
Sure.
So if you say, looking back on your career, what's something that you've become more intentional about as you've gotten older and your younger self probably overlooked?
All right. Well, first, I'm only 29, so I just don't feel like
for the last 3 years of your career, then.
Yeah, no, I got a healthy decade at least left, but I look back and it's sort of similar to how we started. I think I really was in myself in the sense of like, this is about me and
what's
how
the
hard
next step
I
for me?
work. Yeah, me and my trajectory are the steps. And that just seems foolish at this point when I realize like that's the last thing that I worry about right now. I worry so much more about who I get to work with and who I can bring onto the team that I know is going to add a lot of value. Selfishly, because I know they're going to, do a great job and I won't have to do it, or, or I know they have a real gift for a certain way of doing things that we need desperately. And that's what I've done since I've been here. It's what I've done in all my roles. And the older you get, the more folks you get to know. And one of my senior team members called me, you're a people collector. You bring people that you meet along the way and put them in the right spot. Yeah. And they've been willing to come with me on a couple of these roles, which is great. And then there's new talent that, we're always finding. So it's all about that and what you can give back. And then, the impact that I want to have is, I don't know, there's just conversations you have and you have no idea how transformative that conversation is going to be with an individual. Like you just were in the lunchroom talking to somebody and then, a year later you'll get an email and it'll be like, do you remember that time we had this conversation in lunch and that just radically transformed how I thought about da 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 da. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. Like that to me, if I can do more of that and I don't even know I'm doing it, then I feel fulfilled that that I helped someone discern something that was important to them, and something I had to say made an impact in their life.
No, I think that's great. I think it helps us maybe transition our own psychology away from just us and what we're doing to what our legacy is going to be.
Yeah.
Right. And as we grow and develop and achieve more financial independence, that allows you opportunities to do that. But just that natural progression as we go through our lives shifts. And I see that over and over as I talk to people is, as we get older and some of our own personal goals and agendas, they become less important. And it's more about, okay, how do I help others, lift others, leave a legacy that people will remember me by, or at least that I know that I made an impact in life.
Exactly. So, in Boy Scouts, we used to say, leave the campsite better than when you found it. Yeah. And, there's a reason for that. And when you show up at one of those campsites where they've done that, you're like, this is great, and that's sort of my philosophy, and I'm genuine about it. I mean, it's because I see the dividends that pays back to me and others, honestly. So it's getting older. That's one of the very few good things about it. You can put it all in perspective, and it's, as we've learned in working with a bunch of different clients, I'm sure you've learned, money isn't everything. And if that's what's driving decision-making for you, it's important. And I know folks are indebted, and I know folks have obligations. And all I'm going to say is the times I've made decisions because I knew it was going to lead to more money were the times I was the most unhappy, honestly.
Yeah.
And, you learn the hard way sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. And, one of the follow-up questions I think you just answered, and it's, if you would go back and give your 35-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be? Maybe not focus on money so much.
Not focus on money so much. One thing, don't wait. There's a lot of folks who are, and I'm seeing this now in friends that are getting older, and some of whom are retiring, they're like, oh, I'm waiting for this big trip that I've always wanted to take, or I've always wanted to do this with my kids, or, and now that I'm 69, or 65, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, man, do it when you're 40, like when you can actually get out of bed without moaning. Don't wait, because those lives,
or that may just not ever come,
exactly.
Your life is never guaranteed. Right. So
exactly.
So I think that's,
and that may be a real privileged position to be in, to be able to say that. But I think, we worry so much. Folks ask me, all right, can I take a week of vacation? I said, why don't you take 2? Like, what are you doing? A week isn't enough, you're, and they're like, what? And I'm like, we're going to be fine. If we're not fine, that's my problem. Like this is take 2 weeks, and I think that especially my European friends are like, take 4 weeks, but I haven't gone that far. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. All right. So traditionally in the podcast, we've closed it out with something that we called the reckoning. I'm actually changing that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, that's serious.
Yeah, because it sounds so intimidating. But what I want to do is kind of close out every episode with a consistent question, and because I think it'll be interesting to hear how different people answer it. So here it is. You ready?
Sure.
How would you define a wealthy life, and how has that definition changed over the course of your career?
Well, we've touched on this a little bit. I think a wealthy life is a life where you have made an impact on the lives of others, and you've done it in a real authentic, intentional way, regardless of what that impact was. I think in emergency medicine, and any physician can say that for sure. And remind yourselves of that. It's important. Leave the planet a little better than you found it. That's wealth. And when I was younger, the classic definition of wealth was looking at my 401k every day, wondering if I was ever going to be able to retire. And getting caught up in some of that. And sure, that's important. And certainly you can help people figure that out. But wealth is those experiences and opportunities you've had to make the lives of others better, because that's how we should measure ourselves. And none of the stuff we accumulate and none of the money we save is coming with me when I'm gone. Right. So the best, like I said, the best stories are the best emails I get, or the best, bumping into somebody in downtown DC who I haven't seen in 5 years, is go back and say, hey, that conversation we had about what I should do next, or that opportunity you gave me to try doing this way, or that idea you let me run with really led to this whole set of things that has made my life amazing. And I just love that. And I once told one of my staff, like, I don't treat the stuff I have as mine. Like, it's, you want to borrow this book, take it. Like, I'll get another one, and I've just lived my life that way. And it's, for the most part, worked out really well. So wealth is that impact. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's interesting. Financial independence, that's a goal for a lot of people, but when you achieve financial independence, the interesting thing is that money, you're basically you're focusing on money, so money can no longer be a focus.
Yeah. It doesn't logically work. Right. I mean, and again, it's a privilege to be in a position to say, I have enough.
Yeah. Yes.
And
being able to define that is not easy for everybody.
No.
So that's another part of it. Yeah.
And part of it getting older, and I'm acting like I'm super old. I'm not super old, but is being able to say, I do have enough. Enough for me is less than this. Yeah. Right. And that's so liberating, because you can make a whole different set of choices that way.
Yeah.
And
it's about creating options.
Yeah, creating options. And this, in the society in which we live, there's no conversation about enough. There's always conversation about more and more and more.
Yeah.
And that just can wear you out, you know. And so when you take a mindset of abundance, which is really hard, and it is a real privilege to be able to say that's something I can do, it does change, Yeah. And the people I meet in all walks of life and all roles that know they have enough are wonderful people. Yeah. And people I want to hang out with.
Yeah, absolutely. That changes everything. And that's, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's hard to define, and it has nothing to do with how much money, like numerically, right?
Yeah.
It's more about having enough, creating a mindset. And because to me, I think part of true wealth is the ability to give back to others. Because if you can give back to others, that means you have more than enough for yourself.
Right. And you can do that with very little money. You can do that with a lot of money.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome.
Great question. Yeah, you got to rebrand that one, though.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, awesome conversation. You've given us a lot to think about. I appreciate your time. Anything else you want to say in closing before we wrap it up?
Sure. Well, I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm not that kind of doctor, but I'm just glad to be on a show that features some really cool things that emergency medicine physicians can do, and that a finance guy is willing to have conversations about the non dollars. Stuff is really, really important. And so kudos to you for putting this together.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go ahead and do our wrap-up episode. At the end of each episode, I like to pick out 4 or 5 or 6 points that we can kind of focus on about what we learned from our guests. And I think Mike gave us a lot to think about. It's hard to even narrow it down. But there's a few that really stood out to me. The first one is one that I've heard over and over. Don't build resumes, build relationships. So it's really the relationships that help lead us to our next shift and next career change, and kind of gives us the opportunity to expand our horizons beyond what we currently know. So very important. And he talked about lots of different ways to do that, including being active, involved in ACEP or other similar organizations. Second one, we talked a lot about leadership lessons. He's been a leader of many organizations, has a master's in leadership, and has thought a lot about it. The points that I take away from what he said is that as a leader, you need to shift your focus away from your own performance onto the performance of your team or your unit. So it's no longer about you. It's how you help your team work together, about how you support them to be successful, how you give them ownership of their own piece, but then helping them all understand how each of those pieces function as a unit to accomplish whatever goal that you've set. So we also need to teach and learn followership skills just as much as leadership skills. But as a leader, you can be the kind of leader that makes following easier and motivating. All right, career moves. Very few second shifts are a safe bet. Take some courage. Even after all the analysis takes place, then it's a matter of just trusting your gut and being willing and able to step out into the dark a little bit and see where that leads you. I think it's easy to just kind of stay in our comfort zone, even if that comfort zone is not what's making us happy or fulfilled. Next point is about transformative conversations. I love this part. It says, these are the conversations that you have with people in the food line or the water cooler that were meaningful and honest, but that you never really realized the effect that it had until sometime later, when that person comes back to you and lets you know how something that you said changed their life in an impactful way. What a way to leave a lasting legacy. Finally, don't wait to do the things that you've always wanted to do. You might not have the chance, the health, or the energy to do it all later. So carve out the time and the resources to create those memories when you can. Thanks again to Mike Fraser. Great pearls of wisdom, and I'm sure that you've all enjoyed this conversation and hope that you can learn from it. If you did enjoy this conversation, please share it with your friends. Let them know about our podcast. Subscribe. That would be greatly appreciated. And best of luck wherever your second shift leads you. Take care. We'll see you next time.
The work you did mattered, and you're not done. Welcome to what's next.
Thank you for listening to The Second Shift. If this conversation landed with you, please download our free guide called The Second Shift Blueprint. 5 questions you and your partner should discuss before any major transition. Get it at secondshiftpodcast.com. That's number 2 ndshiftpodcast.com. And if you're approaching a transition and want to talk through the financial strategy, we offer a complimentary 30-minute second shift audit. Details are at secondshiftpodcast.com/audit. Join us next week for another great episode. And remember, your life and identity doesn't end with retirement. It's just entering its second shift. The content shared in this podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered personal financial advice. You should always consult with a financial professional to determine what is appropriate for your individual circumstances.